I'm Sophie Ikenye, and you're watching Focus on Africa from BBC World News. Let's now turn to Nigeria, where reported rapes have tripled during the COVID-19 pandemic, according to the United Nations. The Children's Fund says 1 in 4 girls have been victims of sexual violence, and approximately 70% reporting more than one incident of sexual violence. And here is the testimony of one young victim.
The first time, it felt like hell. It was my grandma's tenant. It was an uncle figure. I was warned to keep quiet to avoid stigmatizing the family. The second time, it went on and on for a whole year. Later on, it happened almost every time. I did not want to have sex. He was my baby daddy. How could I tell anyone a romantic relationship was laced with rape and zero regard for my body? My advice to survivors out there is silence feels more evil. For every time you stay silent, perpetrators keep winning and the cycle never ends. Speak up, seek help, and get justice.
Well, the Nigerian government has declared a state of national emergency over rape and gender-based violence. Let's bring in Kenny DaSilva-Ibru. She's a gynecologist and founder of the Women at Risk International. Thank you for taking time to talk to us in the program. How did you help us understand how did COVID-19 contribute to the increase of rape cases in Nigeria?
Well, thank you very much for having me, Sophie. As you rightly said, the statistics that we work with in Nigeria when it comes to gender-based violence is 1 in 4 girls before the age of 18. And if you expand that statistics to include women, you say 1 in 14 women sadly would endure acts of violence. And this was before the COVID pandemic. At our organization, in the very first lockdown back in March of 2020, because of the stay-home measures that certainly were needed to stem the spread of the virus, unfortunately, we saw the apparent shadow pandemic evolve. We recorded a 64% increase in the number of calls from women trapped at home with their abusers. And since then, we've noticed a 20% increase in the number of cases that we see at the Warwick Rape Crisis Center.
Are there any measures already in place to tackle this issue?
I mean, there are measures, certainly. Unfortunately, not enough to address the magnitude of this problem. For example, when we look at the referral centers, between 2017 and now, there's been an increase of 150% of the number of women visiting these sexual assault referral centers. So we have measures, as I said, but certainly not near enough based on the magnitude and the scale of the problem that we're experiencing in Nigeria.
Help us understand how various states deal with this kind of issues, for example.
Well, in Nigeria, we have 36 states. I would go as far as to say that every state tends to handle it a little differently. Some are certainly more progressive than others. If you look at our laws, for example, the Child Rights Act that was adopted in 2003, only 25 states of the 36 has domesticated it. And the same applies with our rape laws under our violence against persons prohibition laws. We only have 23 states out of the 36. I referenced the sexual assault referral centers. We have 30 of those across 17 states. And in Lagos alone, we have 4. So you can see that there's some states that are certainly more progressive than others, and there's some states that are tracking the problem a bit more efficiently as well.
Time and time again, we get to hear about the issue of culture. How do we address this issue of culture? And have you come across this as one of the reasons that we keep seeing this happening?
Well, absolutely. I mean, culture is a fundamental reason when it comes to violence against girls and women in many parts of Africa, and including Nigeria. Nigeria already is a patriarchal country, so women are already subjugated with the male dominance. Sadly, we do have cultural practices that are harmful to girls and women. And we have women that are socialized in many of these states across the country that honestly just believe that the culture in itself is the right way to live, and therefore endure these acts of violence in silence. And then we have enabling communities that do not stand up for the rights of these women, And so unfortunately, that in itself creates a rape culture that has become apparent in Nigeria, and now these acts have been permissible.
Tell us a little bit, in brief, if you can, about your foundation, for example.
So my foundation is a non-profit organization, and we address the prevalence of rape, sexual violence, and trafficking of young girls and women across all the communities in the country. We've been working in this space for over 4 years now. We're very deliberate in our approach. We work under our health, education, and community service pillars. We implement not just a post-incident rape crisis center where free care and forensic examinations as well as counseling is offered. We've been fortunate enough to stay open throughout all the lockdowns, and we've seen over 2,200 beneficiaries. Sadly, the youngest has been 2 years of age, the oldest in her 60s, and we've seen all walks of life when it comes to the criteria of women that sadly have been brutalized, if you will, with these acts.
All right, we have to leave it there. Kemi DaSilva-Ibru, thank you very much for taking time to talk to us here on Focus on Africa on this very important topic. Thank you.
Thank you very much for having me.